February 28, 2026, 9:27 a.m. local time, Tehran. After months of unsuccessful negotiations and dismissed diplomatic solutions, the moment had arrived. Explosions tore through the Iranian capital. Not one, not two, but dozens across multiple districts, government buildings, military compounds, intelligence facilities. Smoke rose over the city as millions of Iranians heading to work on the first day of their week scrambled for cover. This was not a warning strike. This was not a limited operation. This was Operation Epic Fury, a combined U.S.-Israeli response to years of Iranian nuclear defiance, ballistic missile development, and support for terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East. Within minutes, reports poured in from across Iran strikes in Isfahan, Tabriz, Shiraz, Qom, and Karaj. At least a dozen cities under assault simultaneously. Israeli F-35S and U.S. bombers were hitting hundreds of targets, nuclear facilities, missile production sites, Revolutionary Guard headquarters, and according to Israeli military sources, they were pursuing the top of the regime, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, President Masoud Pezeshkian, and Armed Forces Chief of Staff Abdulrahim Musavi. Decapitation strikes intended to eliminate Iran's leadership in a single blow, but Iran did not collapse. It struck back. Within hours, missiles streaked across the Middle East, dozens, perhaps hundreds fired at Israel, at U.S. bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE, and at American allies throughout the Gulf. This was no longer a crisis. This was war, and it was spreading rapidly. The strikes commenced at exactly 9:27 a.m. Tehran time on Saturday morning, the beginning of the Iranian workweek. But this moment did not emerge from nowhere. It followed months of exhausted diplomatic efforts. Just 2 days earlier, U.S. and Iranian negotiators had gathered in Geneva for the latest round of nuclear discussions, mediated by Oman, centered on one critical issue preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The talks produced nothing. Iran refused to halt uranium enrichment, refused to dismantle its stockpile, and refused to allow international inspectors back into the sites bombed the previous June. Meanwhile, satellite imagery revealed Iran was reconstructing those same nuclear facilities, reinforcing them and relocating critical assets deeper underground. Iran's ballistic missile program continued to expand missiles capable of reaching Europe, missiles that endangered U.S. bases throughout the Middle East, missiles that could one day reach American soil. President Trump had given Iran a deadline, 10 days to agree to terms. Iran declined. Oman's foreign minister, who had mediated the talks, stated there had been notable progress, but the White House made clear the two sides remained far apart on key issues. In plain terms, Iran was not moving, and Washington had exhausted its patience. Unlike the June 2025 strikes, which occurred at night, these came in broad daylight. Schools were in session. Offices were open. The streets were crowded. The first explosion struck Tehran's Pasteur district, a heavily secured compound housing Ayatollah Khamenei's residence and office. Iranian state media immediately reported that top officials were safe, but witnesses on the ground described complete disorder, multiple blasts, buildings shaking, smoke rising from government complexes. Then the strikes expanded. Isfahan, home to Iran's ballistic missile production facilities, was hit hard, with multiple explosions reported across the city. Tabriz in the northwest, Shiraz in the south, Qom, Iran's holy city, and Karaj just outside Tehran. At least 12 cities struck in the first wave alone. And in the southern town of Minab, tragedy unfolded. An Israeli missile slammed into a girls' elementary school. At least 51 were killed, according to state media, possibly more. Video from the scene showed backpacks scattered among rubble, school books covered in dust, and emergency responders pulling children from the wreckage. Israel's military did not immediately respond to the school strike, but the images were already spreading across Iranian social media, fueling intense anger toward the attackers. By 10 a.m., the full scope of the operation had become apparent. This was not solely about nuclear sites. According to Israeli military officials, the strikes targeted three categories of locations. First, nuclear and missile facilities, the same sites struck in June 2025, now hit again because Iran had been rebuilding them. Second, military infrastructure, including Revolutionary Guard bases, intelligence compounds, and command and control centers. And third, leadership-specific buildings where senior Iranian officials were believed to be gathered. Israeli Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi confirmed the operation had been coordinated with the United States over several months. Air Force pilots are striking hundreds of targets across Iran at significant personal risk and in coordination with U.S. strikes, Halevi stated. By midday, reports began surfacing about casualties among Iran's leadership. 3 sources confirmed to Reuters that Iran's Defense Minister Aziz Nasirizadeh had been killed in the strikes. Revolutionary Guards Commander Mohammad Pakpour was also reportedly eliminated. An Iranian source close to the establishment confirmed that several senior commanders and political officials had been killed, though precise numbers remained unverified. As for Ayatollah Khamenei, his condition remained uncertain. One source told Reuters that Khamenei had been moved to a secure location before the strikes began. Another source indicated he had been targeted, but the outcome was unknown. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told NBC News that both Khamenei and President Pezeshkian were alive as far as I know, though he did not sound confident. By early afternoon Tehran time, the first wave of strikes had concluded, though the operation was far from over. President Trump released a video on Truth Social at 2:30 a.m. Washington time. His tone was direct and unrelenting. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. He outlined Iran's decades of hostility. The 1,979 seizure of the U.S. Embassy, attacks on American forces, support for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and the ongoing nuclear program, despite repeated warnings. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. The president framed the operation as defensive. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. Then came the statement that generated headlines worldwide. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. Trump was openly urging regime change, calling on the Iranian people to overthrow their government while American bombs were still falling. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reinforced the message. We are doing this in full cooperation with our friends in the United States, under the brave leadership of President Trump. Together with the United States, we will strike the terror regime hard. We will create conditions that will allow the brave Iranian people to throw off the yoke of this murderous regime. This was not merely about degrading Iran's military capabilities. This was an attempt to dismantle Islamic Republic entirely. But regime change demands more than airstrikes. It requires the population to rise up, the military to stand down, and the government to fall apart. And so far, none of that was occurring. Instead, Iran was retaliating. At 11:43 a.m. Tehran time, air raid sirens began screaming across Israel. Missiles were incoming, dozens of them, fired from deep inside Iran, arcing over Iraq and streaking toward Israeli cities. Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, all under attack. Israel's Iron Dome, Arrow, and David Sling defense systems activated immediately. Interceptors launched. Explosions illuminated the sky as missiles were destroyed mid-flight. Most were intercepted, but not all. A 9-story building in northern Israel was struck after an Iranian missile pierced the defenses. One man sustained minor injuries from shrapnel. Across Israel, 89 people were reportedly lightly injured, mostly from falls while rushing to shelters or from flying debris. But the most significant damage was not in Israel. It was across the Gulf. At 12:15 p.m., explosions shook Bahrain. Video footage captured the moment an Iranian missile struck near the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, the base housing thousands of American sailors and serving as the command center for U.S. naval operations in the Middle East. Iranian air defenses intercepted some missiles, but at least one penetrated, slamming into the compound. No immediate reports of American casualties, but the strike conveyed an unmistakable message. Iran can reach U.S. forces. Then came Qatar. The U.S. Embassy in Doha issued an emergency alert, ordering all American citizens to shelter in place immediately. Minutes later, missiles streaked toward Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, with over 10,000 American troops stationed there. Qatari air defenses engaged and made multiple interceptions. Debris from destroyed missiles rained down on residential neighborhoods outside the capital. One piece of falling shrapnel ignited a fire, sending smoke billowing from the outskirts of Doha as emergency crews rushed to respond. Qatar's Ministry of Defense confirmed it had repelled several attacks, but condemned the Iranian strikes as a blatant violation of sovereignty. Then Kuwait Ali Al Salem Air Base, a major hub for U.S. Air Force operations, came under fire. Kuwaiti air defense systems intercepted all incoming missiles, though 12 people were injured on the ground, mostly from debris. Then the UAE Dubai, the region's business and tourism hub, was struck. Explosions echoed across the city. Air defense fire streaked through the sky. Falling debris from an intercepted missile killed one person, a Pakistani national. Smoke rose from the luxurious Palm development, where hotels and residences line the waterfront. Tourists and residents fled indoors as sirens blared. One witness, 30-year-old Nata Al-Ghari, described the moment. "We were at the Waldorf Astoria for iftar when we heard a massive explosion. Everyone started running. Even Saudi Arabia, Iran's long-standing regional rival, was not spared. Explosions were reported in Riyadh, the Saudi capital." The Minister of Foreign Affairs swiftly issued a statement condemning Iran's attacks and expressing solidarity with Qatar, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE. Saudi Arabia vowed to take all necessary measures to defend itself. Then came the announcement that rattled global markets. Iran declared it had closed the Strait of Hormuz. The narrow waterway between Iran and the UAE is the world's most vital oil choke point. Roughly 20% of global oil consumption passes through it every single day. Closing it would cut off energy supplies to Europe, Asia, and beyond. Oil prices would surge. Economies would suffer. Traders braced for turmoil when markets reopened Monday, with analysts predicting oil could jump $10 to $20 per barrel unless the situation de-escalated swiftly. One notable exception to Iran's retaliation was Oman. While missiles rained down on Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, Oman remained untouched. The reason? Oman has spent 50 years cultivating a neutral relationship with Iran. Back in the 1970s during the Dhofar Rebellion, Iran's Shah dispatched troops to help Oman's Sultan suppress Marxist insurgents, a bond that endured even after Iran's 1979 revolution. Since then, Oman has served as a mediator between Iran and the West, hosting the back-channel discussions that produced the 2015 nuclear deal and, just days ago, facilitating the latest round of negotiations in Geneva. Oman is known as the Switzerland of the Middle East neutral, trusted by both sides, and strategically valuable to Tehran. Attacking Oman would cost Iran one of its only remaining diplomatic lifelines in the Gulf, so Oman was spared. By late Saturday afternoon Tehran time, the exchanges continued. Israel launched a second wave of strikes, this time targeting missile launchers and air defense systems in central Iran. Explosions were reported near the Intelligence Ministry building in northern Tehran. Iran's Revolutionary Guards issued a statement. "This operation will continue relentlessly until the enemy is decisively defeated. All U.S. assets throughout the region are considered legitimate targets." A senior Revolutionary Guards commander, Ibrahim Jabari, warned that Iran had so far deployed only outdated missiles and would soon introduce unforeseen weapons, a warning that set off alarms across the Pentagon. What was Iran holding in reserve? Advanced missiles? Drones? Cyber attacks? Nobody knew, and that uncertainty made the situation all the more perilous. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi sent a letter to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Iran will not initiate any war, but in the event that it is subjected to military aggression, Iran will respond decisively and proportionately. All bases, facilities, and assets of hostile forces in the region shall be regarded as legitimate military objectives. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session Saturday afternoon in New York. I call for de-escalation and an immediate cessation of hostilities. We are witnessing a grave threat to international peace and security. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, issued a statement confirming it was closely monitoring developments and had detected no evidence of radiological impact from the strikes. A critical point, because a breach of a nuclear facility could produce catastrophic consequences. By evening, the full extent of the damage inside Iran was still coming into focus. Iranian state media reported strikes across at least 12 cities, government buildings damaged, military bases hit, infrastructure demolished, but precise casualty figures remained unavailable as the Iranian government had not yet released numbers. What was evident? Iran's leadership had survived. Khamenei was alive. According to Iranian officials, Pezeshkian was alive. The regime had not collapsed, but it had been severely shaken. 2 senior military commanders confirmed dead, multiple government facilities destroyed, and air defenses overwhelmed in certain areas. And the strikes were not finished. U.S. officials told CNN they were preparing for several more days of attacks, making clear this was a sustained campaign aimed at degrading Iran's capacity to fight back. The central question was now, how far would this go? Trump acknowledged that American lives might be lost, something that, he admitted, often happens in war. He also warned that bombs would be falling across Iran and urged Iranians to remain sheltered until the operation was complete. Netanyahu pledged that Israel would keep striking until Iran's military was decisively defeated. But neither leader articulated what victory would look like: regime change, complete elimination of Iran's nuclear program, or the dismantlement of the Revolutionary Guards, and neither addressed the most dangerous risk: regional escalation. Iran had threatened to pull the entire Middle East into the conflict. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria could all mobilize and strike U.S. and Israeli targets. Russia had already dispatched a warship to join Iranian naval drills, and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that a U.S. strike on Iran would carry serious consequences. China, Iran's largest oil customer, had remained silent. But Beijing would not overlook a conflict threatening global energy supplies. The situation could spiral quickly. As of Saturday evening, the situation remained volatile, strikes continuing, missiles flying, casualties mounting. Then, as of the recording of this video, President Trump confirmed what Israeli intelligence had been reporting for hours. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead. The 86-year-old supreme leader of Iran, who governed the Islamic Republic for nearly 4 decades, was killed in the strikes targeted, tracked, and eliminated. Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead, Trump declared on Truth Social. He was unable to evade our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. Working in close coordination with Israel, the operation had also eliminated Ali Shamkhani, Secretary of the Iranian Security Council and one of Khamenei's top advisors, Revolutionary Guard Commander Mohammad Pakpour, and Defense Minister Aziz Nasirizadeh. The entire upper tier of Iran's leadership had been wiped out in a single day. Khamenei's death created an enormous power vacuum. Iran has had only 2 supreme leaders since the 1979 revolution: Ruhollah Khomeini, the founder, and Khamenei, who assumed power in 1989. There is no clear successor and no established process for selecting one during a crisis. And now, with American bombs still falling and missiles still flying, Iran's government faced its gravest challenge in 47 years. Trump characterized Khamenei's death as the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country, and claimed that members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps no longer wished to fight and were seeking immunity from the United States. Hopefully, the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves, Trump wrote. But regime change is far from guaranteed. Iran's military could seize control, hardliners could consolidate power, or the country could descend into chaos. What comes next remains unknown. But one thing is certain: Iran will never be the same. Airlines canceled flights across the Middle East. U.S. embassies in Qatar, the UAE, and Israel directed staff to shelter in place. And across the Gulf, millions of people watched the skies, waiting for the next wave.